you're saying that the instruction, right? So that's Professor Pisco here, right? Teacher Pisco is in his classrooms in front of his kids, right? And he's talking about, he's like explaining, okay, sometimes boys want to dress as girls, right? Like this type of instruction might have some sort of, in your case, deleterious effect in terms of like confusion, right? Simply, hey, let's go over this, right? I'm just going to speak some words to you. And then this might confuse the child and maybe put some feelings that would not have developed elsewhere. I want to start there. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Yeah, and
Okay.
I don't think
Okay.
it's as
So
simple as speak some words, right? And in cases
come on.
where we know
That is
this
what
has,
that's your argument is.
okay, but in cases where we know this has happened, right? We've had teachers hiding like a transgender identity that their child has adopted in the classroom from the parents.
Don't talk about that stuff. That's not what we're talking about. Don't bring up the specific.
But that's exactly what I'm worried about.
Okay, no, but your argument wasn't referencing those kinds of circumstances.
I'm worried about irresponsible educators speaking of children about
this and then dishonestly bring up circumstances.
And confusing
one at a time.
No, this is super dishonest. Doobie gives an argument. Argument stands on its own 2 feet, and then he introduces circumstances that are not present in the generalized argument he has because he feels a little uncomfortable about where you're going to go with this, Prime. It's so dishonest. You're such a hack, Doobie. Like, you give a generalized reasoning. You can't just...
One at a time.
Doobie... Okay, listen.
Hold on. One at a time.
The Florida bill was a situation in which
no one's denying the situation. You're being dishonest.
A student's transgender identity from
not denying the situation. No one cares.
Sorry, guys. Hey, knock it off. Hey, whoa. Fanatic put me in charge, and he wants me to moderate the he'll moderate, right? So like,
he's just gonna talk about the story. No one cares about.
Yeah, I know. I already agree with you. I'm on your side here. But like, I want Jimmy to get his point out. I'll don't worry. I'll deal with it. I know what you're saying, Pisco, and I'll go in that direction. But Doobie, get out your point.
Yeah, again, the point is, I don't think it's as simple as saying, "Oh, all they're doing is speaking words," right? I think because these are children who are attempting to figure out their identities, right? Are in very early stages of that, and because teachers are in a position of authority, and I'm worried that the way these things are taught to these children could influence them toward an identity that I think would be detrimental for them, i.e., transness.
Okay, all right. So
I just want a quick thing. Prime.
Don't worry, I got it. Don't worry. But Pisco, don't worry, I got this for you. Right. So I agree with what Pisco was saying previously. So the thing we've been arguing about this entire time has been classroom instructions, right? And classroom instruction is speaking about like this subject, right? Like explaining it to them. That's the thing we've been working off on for hours at this point. Now you are pulling in this other example, and I know what you're talking about, and I acknowledge it exists, right? That they didn't notify the parents that their kid were feeling this way, right? But that's a separate issue from classroom instruction, right? And so that's the thing I want to work off of. So classroom instruction is maybe I'll show a diagram, right, of like a little boy character in a fucking dress, right? I don't know, right? So it could be audio visual, right? But you think that this is a thing that causes harm, right? So, and confusion. So let's take that age cohort, right? That K through third grade. We can take that cohort and then put them in other situations that they'll experience outside, right? Like actually seeing men in dresses, or sorry, trans individuals. I don't want to be, yeah. But or seeing gay couples, right? Actually in real life, we have like cable television, right? We have reality TV shows where like the drag race thing, right? Where you see these things happen. If not their parents are watching it, then a cousin will be watching it at their house or something. They're going to be exposed to it. So how is that, right? If experiencing those things out in the wild and having no way of like placing them in their experiences, how is that less confusing than simply Professor Pisco explaining this to his children
and answering questions at the time?
Okay, so I think them seeing man in a dress, maybe like a drag queen or something, right, or a trans person or whatever on TV. Yeah, this could be confusing, right? But I think it's the place of the parents, if this comes up and the child has a question, to answer those questions, right? Just as it'd be the place of the parents, if the child heard about a genocide on TV, right, or heard about the Holocaust. I think in kindergarten, if a student has a question about the Holocaust, I don't want the teacher getting into what the Holocaust is with kindergartners, right? I think it's okay to say, hey, this is the place of the parent. When they get older, they're more ready for this. We'll talk about it in class.
Pisco?
What Doobie's doing here is, I don't know if the proper term is Mott and Bailey, but it's dishonest, right? So at first he talks about, well, the concern is confusion. It's confusion. And teaching this is going to be, it's going to cause confusion if you have teachers to do it. You're given one example where, it could be possible in this other world that I create that the confusion is caused by the out of context viewing of these kinds of actual instances of the manifestation of these identities coming about, and that's what's causing the confusion as opposed to the classroom instruction. And he shifts. Now it's not about the confusion. Now it's about parental rights. And so if you could prove, let me finish, Doobie, I'll let you finish.
Yeah.
If you could prove that classroom instruction on these issues lowered confusion, Doobie would still say it doesn't matter. Confusion doesn't matter anymore because it's still parental rights. And so everything he told you about confusion was either he's not keeping it consistent in his head, or I don't know how do you, if it's true that classroom instruction lowers confusion, how do you leverage that with your parental rights argument? These could point in opposite ways. You need to have one principle and stick to it, and not just like use memes every time you're backed into a corner.
Okay, I don't think I've used any memes, and I don't think that I've acknowledged here that classroom instruction lowers confusion. I actually think at those ages it would increase confusion. I think that's what I'm opposed to, right? But and you guys are saying, oh, well, what if they see something like this in the wild, right? They see a trans person in the wild. Well, they can ask the parents, just as if they'd heard about anal sex on TV somewhere and they brought it up in the classroom. I'd want the teacher to say, hey, ask your parents, right? Because it's not the place of the teacher, right? And a teacher discussing anal sex with a child in the classroom or with a classroom full of children who are now all talking about anal sex because one of them heard about it on TV, I think could be confusing, could be detrimental to their development, and I'd want them to push that to the parents because it's not a conversation I think instructors should be having with the children in the classroom.
Assume for the sake of hypo, classroom instruction lowers confusion on trans issues and gay issues. Would you want classroom instruction on those issues? Yes or no?
If we knew for a fact that it lowered the confusion and the possibility that these kids were going to develop gender dysphoria, then yeah, I'd be for it.
Then we don't know that. Wait, so your parental rights argument is gone now. I mean, why bring that up?
Hold on, because I think parents have a right to shield their children from negative side effects that come with the instruction, i.e., but the thing is, shifting of their gender identity because they've been exposed to trans shit too early.
But when we but age appropriate, even you've already explained that, like, basically, like, when defined what would be age inappropriate to you, you give examples of things that, like, we generally speaking, I don't think would be okay with teachers talking to our kids about now. And I mean, I'm not an expert, I'm not a lawyer, but I've got to believe that there's already systems in place to handle people who are, like, talking to kids about expressly inappropriate things like anal sex at age 5, or like talking about, like, gender reassignment surgery and the intricacies of it to 6-year-olds or things like that, right? Like, surely there's some kind of like.
But the point is his reasoning is bad.
Essentially, the bill is irrelevant in the way that Doobie is trying to frame.
He's not even talking about the bill anymore. He's talking about, like, his actual foundations. And if you say you have a parental right, and you have a right until circumstances change such that we know that the good outweighs the bad. At what good is the right? I mean, the whole point of, like, the right to free speech is to say speech that's bad and harmful. A right is supposed to persist whether or not it causes harm. And so you saying that I respect parents' rights, but then saying, oh, but if you could prove that it lowered confusion, I would just get away with those rights.
It's not just about the parental rights, right? When I use the word specifically responsibility, it's their responsibility to do these things if it's something they choose to do, right? So Pisco, if we had some kind of data to suggest that teaching kindergartners about rape, right, would lower the possibility of them being raped in the future, and I mean like brutal rape, right? Yeah. In detail, would lower the possibility of them being raped in the future. You could probably say, hey, yeah, we should probably teach these kids about rape
because I don't have a unilateral parental rights framework. But
I don't either.
Okay, but what you were suggesting was that Prime gave you a story where it seemed that the confusion was being caused not by classroom instruction, it was in fact maybe being cleared up by classroom instruction. You said, well, in that case, even there, parental rights. So then you have to grant Prime as example. You have to grant Prime as example.
But that's not true. Prem gave me the possibilities, but we don't know that that's the case. In fact, everything we do know points to the opposite being the truth, right? Where
why? Wait, what's your evidence?
If they're exposed, again, we know
it's just broad evidence that it's
yada,
both
yada.
environmental,
I understand.
It's both environmental and
developmental
genetic
influences, the culture, the society they grow up in, all the things that they're exposed
so
to as children influence the expression of their gender identity and their sexual orientation.
Yeah,
if you disagree with that, sure, okay.
So
no.
I just want to be clear, because I read
Doobie.
through the article. I just real quick scientific clarification. So what the article, as far as I can tell, mostly talks about is like basically the basic concept of like how our environment can affect our genes, and there are certain forms of gene expression. This is like it's so broad. It's like you could say that about like any form of any physiological.
You can make any story based on that evidence, right? You can make any story based on that evidence. You can make
it's not doesn't mean what you think it means. Basically,
It's so true, because you would think almost intuitively that the people who are going to give it the most instruction and most are going to expose it, the people that they're most interacting with, is like their family. And so you could make the same exact story that Doobie just gave you based on environmental and genetic factors, that like parents shouldn't be teaching this to their children, and there should be laws against parents teaching the kids these concepts, or like the media shouldn't be allowed to do it. So you can make
that's a much deeper rabbit hole that we can go down.
No,
but
everyone can grant to you that these identities are not solely the basis of genetic factors, that they're influenced by societies and cultures. So what? I mean, that doesn't tell you that your story is true. That's not anything. That's merely acknowledging that things influence other things. It's so broad as to be. It actually, I think, you bringing it up is a form of deception, because it's you acting as though you have scientific research to show that teachers teaching kids these concepts harms them, but you don't. It's just a meme.
But we know that exposure to these concepts does influence the way that these children express themselves, right? Express their gender identities and develop the gender identities. That I think we all agree with that. You just agreed with that. So
I stipulate
that's
that
the
exposure.
Point. And what I'm saying is that given that we all acknowledge this, right? I think that this instruction, these instruction about sexual orientation, about gender identity and sexual orientation, should be moved later on in their school.
One might stipulate. First of all, you got so many problems. One might stipulate that that kids are likely to be influenced by a certain viewing or experience of these identities. But maybe it's only a particular kind of viewing. Maybe it's a viewing without context, or an experiencing without context. Or maybe your intuition is wrong and they're more likely to be confused the later in time they're first introduced to these concepts. And actually, it helps them for confusion and for context to introduce it earlier on. You have no evidence to suggest that one approach is more logical or intuitive than the other. All you have are your feels and this very generalized statement that you can get like most people to agree to, which is that people respond to outside things. Well, yeah, duh, but that doesn't give you any evidence for your particular narrative. It could be the direct opposite narrative. You have no way of saying that's not true. You have no way of saying that, like, if you introduce it later on without context, you make them more confused. And it's important to show it early on.
Hold on, but we do have evidence of that, though. Because we know that the vast majority of people that develop gender dysphoria do it before they're 7 years old, right? So given that this is the age range we're talking about 5 to 9 years old, right? And the vast majority of people who have gender dysphoria and are
oh my god, how unscientific can you be?
Develop it before they hit 7 years old. then yeah, I don't think there's any reason to believe that introducing them to this concept later.
You clearly never took a stats class. You never.
Please,
you're not.
I don't think there's any reason to believe. I don't think there's any reason to believe that introducing them to these concepts later could lead to like late onset gender dysphoria. And if you have something that shows that,
you're a fool.
But I don't think you do.
You're a fool. I mean, I don't know what to tell you.
I don't care about your insults. You don't have anything to support what you're saying. So you're going to call me names. You're
going
to
mine is the agnostic.
You're going to pretend that the stats you haven't even looked at are wrong.
Mine is the agnostic position.
No, it's
not. It is the agnostic position.
No, it's not.
Doobie is such a fool that Doobie will say something like, "Well, because most people who develop gender dysphoria before 7, that's true of most people, develop gender dysphoria before 7. Therefore, the people who are likely to be influenced by instruction, they must also be before 7. That doesn't follow logically. Just because it could be the case that the majority of people who are having dysphoria before 7, those are the people for whom it's mostly genetic. you have no way to disentangle these things. And there could be some subset that people you're worried about for confusion, and they're not like the population who are predisposed to it because of genetics. And you have no way to disentangle that. And just by pointing to two stats and being like, they're most 7, therefore every population must be like that population. That is the dumbest way to look at issues. And I think it's very emblematic of your approach to these subjects. Usually it's disingenuous, but it's also just like a lack of comprehension of how stats work and how understanding works and how to prove stuff.
Okay, sorry, give me one. Okay, sorry, my girlfriend hopped in. Okay, so again,
hey, can I just say I'm gonna go. Thanks for the conversation, y'all. Have a good night. Good luck.
Okay, again, you can Google all of these things because you're not really disagreeing with me here. You're disagreeing with experts who've devoted their lives to studying exactly these fields, right? And they will say, and everything that I'm looking at, and everything I've looked at, whenever I've looked into these topics, that most people develop their gender identity by the age of 2. However, if a child is going to be dysphoric, if they're going to develop gender dysphoria, that usually happens by the time they're either 7 years old, right? So the development of their gender is
you didn't hear what I said.
No, I did. Right? You attempted to.
How are you responding to just by repeating your conclusion?
You attempted to hand wave it and pretend that this is some issue with my comprehension. But what I'm reciting to you is exactly what these experts are saying.
So I want to work within your framework. Okay. So and I want to narrow it down specifically to the thing that you have an objection to. All right. So you are afraid that you think the trans identity is a deleterious one, right?
Yes.
So okay. And so you don't want to influence more children than would otherwise be into being trans. Okay. Does this also extend to being gay? I just want to make sure we're all on the same page.
No,
Okay.
not really into being gay.
Okay.
Well, hold on. So unless there are like issues with being gay that I'm not aware of, right? So far as I understand, there aren't any like comorbid mental illnesses that come along with being gay, i.e. like gay people don't have a kind of dysphoria or anything like this, right? So yeah, I think it's
Okay.
I wouldn't extend it to that.
Sure. So all right. So then you wouldn't mind teachers talking about like, their husbands, or just saying that boys might kiss other boys. That part is immaterial to you.
Yeah, if it were just that, I wouldn't care. I wouldn't even mind like I don't know. See, because I would even have like issues with them talking about like heterosexual relationships and like at that early an age, right? So and I don't think it's, oh god, just go,
dude.
So I don't think it. So I think that entire like discussion should be shifted until they're a little older. However, if we had teachers talking about being gay in the 5th grade or 4th grade or whatever it is, and some of those children ended up being gay, I wouldn't care.
Okay.
So, how much classroom instruction do you think is happening?
That it could affect talking about gay people and lesbians, right? Do you think that being exposed to the concept of it, right, being it being explained and it being normalized at those ages, right? So we're thinking 5 to 8 years old, right? At those ages, do you think that would have an effect on them, though?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
and what is the effect that it would have?
I think normalizing the idea among children who are still attempting to figure out their gender identity, that they, even though they were born a boy, they might actually be a girl, identity. And
No. I'm not going there. I'm talking about I'm leaving our trans brothers and sisters out of it just for a moment. I'm talking about the LGBT group. Hearing about that at that age, right? Being told, that these things are a normal thing, and it being like nothing to worry about. Would that affect a child and their sexual orientation?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think it could affect children. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And what way would it affect them?
It could affect.
Yeah, based on everything we know about gender identity, absolutely. Yeah, this would actually.
A lot of things could affect things. That's a something statement from Doobie. Other Braves take from Doobie. Something could affect something.
I mean, I guess. Okay.
How about you have some teeth to it and say, yeah, I think that there's a huge pandemic.
I don't think there's a huge pandemic of teachers making kids gay.
Okay,
like, that's not what I'm saying.
So it could affect it.
I'm saying there could be an impact. Everything we know about this points to there being an impact.
There couldn't be an impact.
Right? But we don't know specifically how much of an impact this has.
Okay,
right? So
all
this
right.
is why
we should make policy
What
based
kind
on
of
this is
impact do you think?
yes, there's a 50% chance they want to suck a dick if they hear this word.
Okay, okay. So you would think that. So hearing about it would encourage. Now, I'm trying to narrow this down. It's a little slow, but please bear with me, right? So the effect would be that later on in life, if you have this instruction talking about sexual orientation, that more of those kids would come out as gay.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Run some studies, bro. Run some studies.
Is it now? Would it have been the case because they have now sexual desire that they wouldn't have had before, or is it that they have social acceptance that they wouldn't have had before?
I think it'd be a little of both, but primarily the sexual desire.
I don't know why we're asking this with like a straight face. He's just like thinking about it and pulling it out of his ass and like considering it.
I just want to
what I've read about the topic. Right. So again, if you want me to post it for you, and you can read through it and tell me why you disagree with these people who've devoted their lives to studying gender and sexuality and sexual.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna really read deeply the literature you send me that like things influence other things and culture influences people.
Go for it and tell me why you disagree with these people who devoted their lives to studying gender identity.
Okay, all right.
I can't wait to read them and tell them that like teachers are a major contributor to someone's sexual identity.
Hold on. Yeah.
Is that what they say? Is that their conclusion?
Don't worry.
Or is that not their conclusion?
Pisco. I'm gonna handle it. Pisco. I got it right. So I on what Pisco was just saying. Okay, like your contention is that a person like a teacher, right? The professor Pisco, right? Simply by giving out instructions, right? Like have like the classroom instructions and like letting people know this doesn't exist, right? And normalizing, saying, hey, it's not a big deal, right? Will instill foreign sexual desire into a child.
Yeah, I would say that even like the heterosexual desire that some of these children feel is also a foreign sexual desire. Right. So I don't think, maybe you disagree. I don't think sexuality is that like, or sexual orientation is like innate. I think that based on the things that you're like influenced by when you're a child, you might end up gay or straight.
You already no, Doobie. You've already acknowledged that it's a multiple things, right? And we can't actually nail it down to what, but are you saying now that genetics doesn't play like the biggest role here, right?
No.
You don't.
So according to these people, it's about 25% is genetics.
25%. Okay.
Yeah.
25% that, and then like what are the lists? Is there any one factor bigger than genetics? I'm just gonna take your word.
Let me find it for you because I don't want to lie to you.
Let him look for it. Like, there's just a problem here, which is. Fine, I'll stipulate that 75% is environment. I don't care. That's not the point. It could be all environment as far as I'm concerned. You know, if environment means literally everything that you see, experience at any time, like, oh my God, that's a lot of stuff. He hasn't done any of the work to show that these kinds of experiences in a primary school or like in kindergarten or first grade, second, third grade, the kind of instruction you're talking about, Prime, which is like purely descriptive and I would say intuitively likely to be more context building than like just some random sight of a drag queen on like a show or something on the street. It's my intuition is that it would build context and build understanding as opposed to building and cementing confusion. He has no basis under which to say, your story is less likely than his. He just has his feels. And so when you're asking him more specific questions, it's like, it's kind of a joke to me. It's like, he doesn't know the first thing. He doesn't know that this kind of instruction is bad, and or like leads to gender dysphoria. And if you want to know how to do that, Doobie, guess what? Develop a study, run the study. That's what you need to take to prove it. You need to, take a sample group of children, you expose them to the treatment, you don't expose the other group of children to the treatment, and you see the rates of gender dysphoria, and you follow up with them. That's how you prove it. You don't prove it by just saying something general like people are influenced by things. Like, yeah, fine, okay, who cares?
So I'm still pulling this out for you, Prime, but really quickly. So I think if we know that it is nature and nurture plays a role here, right? And yes, it's the media they're consuming, it's everything the random drag queen they're seeing in the street, it's all this, right? I'm not willing to use children is like is like as like guinea pigs to forward my progressive social experiment.
So
you're an idiot, dude. Like you're just repeating yourself. Like I don't know what to tell you.
You just told me, hey, yeah, expose these children to these things, and hey, if they develop gender dysphoria, see how that works out, and yada yada. So I'm not interested. I'm not interested in using children to forward a progressive social experiment.
Okay. So
that's
not
the.
That is
what
you're the one who's making assumptions.
Guys,
knock it off. Okay. So, Doobie, I don't think you have the evidence to prove that a teacher's instruction could have such an effect as to I'm not even talking about gender dysphoria. I'm talking about sexual desire. To insert sexual desire within a child simply by explaining that a thing exists and that you might want to do that. I don't think you have any evidence to show that's the case, right? I think that this idea this is why I want to focus on sexual desire rather than gender dysphoria. Gender dysphoria is a mysterious thing to us all, right? But sexual desire, we at least I think everyone here has sexual desire, and to think that out of all the experiences that a child has, right? A child has just an endless number of experiences, like within that time period, but then also throughout the rest of life. That having lesson plans that happen to include these things, right? With a sum total of classroom instruction time of, let's say, 8 hours across all those years, right? That would lead a person to be gay. It doesn't make sense. You don't have the evidence for that. If you have the evidence for that, I will be utterly shocked, because this will change literally my entire world. This will blow my mind, galaxy brain shit. That like the instructions within that time period, right, can be so much more of an effect than anything else that a child can experience, right? That it would override that and insert foreign sexual desire in them. You don't have it.
It's the same evidence he has of the definition of classroom instruction, which is nothing convincing.
How do you think that kinks develop in a person? Like sexual kinks.
He's not the one making claims.
Wait, I'm asking Prime how he
he's
thinks.
Not the one making claims.
I understand. I'm asking him to make a claim. Prime, how do you think kinks develop in a human being?
Kinks develop over experiences that people have. Well, some kinks. Okay, hold on. I can't speak for all kinks because I'm not an expert on this, right? So
where does the Catholic school go?
Don't worry, I'm going to engage with you. I promise I will. I'll just say that I am not an expert on this, right? Well, from what I've heard, there are moments, there are experiences that children have that affect them somehow. Like it initially doesn't express itself as sexual desire, but they can be experiences that affect things they'll be interested in later in life.
Right,
like
and
having
some of these kinks are pretty extreme, and some of this does come from childhood, from like 2 to 10 years old, even.
Sure,
right.
It does. And this will go through the entire life, cause kinks.
This has the same problem. It's gonna have the same problem that all your other stuff does.
Pisco,
same problem.
Pisco, please stop talking.
It's a story.
It's a prime. So, given that you acknowledge this, right? So, so a foreign sexual desire, right? A foreign sexual predilection can be inserted into a child by their experiences, in their young life. Why wouldn't you think that a foreign sexual desire, whether it's being straight or homosexual, right, could be inserted by an authority figure who you spend 8 hours a day with, right? More time than you spend with your own parents, could influence you in a way that also inserts a foreign.
Don't be tricked. He's saying could, not likely. It's could. Everything could, right? You could look at an apple the right way.
Of course, everything could do something. I don't understand why you're like
your burden.
What I'm talking about.
Your burden is
reducing the possibility that this happens by not.
If there's a 0.00000000001% chance that teacher's instruction does that, do you care at all, Doobie? The answer is no. And so what you need to prove is some likelihood that this is going to cause it. And so Prime conceding that it could do anything is just you being tricky. And like, I'm following your arguments. I'm not stupid. I know what you're doing, and you're not going to get away with it.
I think I'm being pretty straightforward.
So your burden is not just could.
You're asking me to believe that even though you guys acknowledge that all their experiences outside of the classroom can impact this thing, everything
could, yes.
Hold on. Okay, hold on. Okay, then I'll change the word. Everything they experience outside the classroom does influence their.
We don't know that they do, but we don't know 100%.
Yes, we do. their environment absolutely affects their sexual.
We know with a certainty that everyone is affected in their sexual desire based on instruction they get. 100%.
No, hold on, not based on instruction, based on their environment, the things that they're exposed to.
Oh, that's too broad. That's too broad. You need to narrow.
No, hold on. It's not too broad, because one of the things that they're exposed to is a classroom where an authority figure that they spend 8 hours a day with.
One of trillions of
more time than a lot of these kids spend with their own parents. More time than a lot of these kids with. Please,
exposed to their blanket.
I understand. And if that blanket had a big dick on it and a picture of a kid sucking on that big dick, I'd assume that the child under the blanket might think it's okay for him to suck a big dick.
You have just enough evidence of that as you do of teachers being likely to cause that.
What I'm talking about is minimizing the possibility that this child is going to be affected in a way that I think is negative.
You don't have any evidence. In fact, you don't even have evidence that it's the
opposite. You guys have already acknowledged my argument.
You haven't. No, we have. You're being dishonest.
You've acknowledged that all their experiences affect
I have acknowledged. No, I'll tell you what I acknowledge that there is a possibility that things in childhood could affect an adult. Yes, anything in child could affect.
Who would deny that?
But
what kind of idiot would you have to be to deny that?
Exactly, right? Like you've given
but then
me
why
nothing.
are you guys denying it?
No, you're making a specific claim that a specific treatment, that is the treatment here in like scientific terms, of teachers instructing on this specific thing is likely or apt or is a risk. You're not just saying it could, because everyone acknowledged, okay, it could. You can give me a could example, but you're trying to make the case that this is a risk. And you haven't made that case. All you've had us do is acknowledge that things influence others, and that trick might work on some of like lower tier Prime-esque panelist people, but it's not going to work on me. I know what your game is, and you're not going to conflate could.
I like you all.
And I think the issue here is that you're so high on your own flatulence that you're looking for a trick that doesn't fucking exist. I'm being very straightforward, I think, right? So we acknowledge that things children are exposed to, right, affect the way that their sexuality and their sexual.
They can, yeah, they can.
It does. It does.
We don't know as a matter of.
We know as a matter of fact that gender identity and sexual orientation are in fact.
You know that every individual person
is affected. Every single person on the planet, their environment influences what gets their dick hard, right? If they don't have a dick, it affects what gets their vagina wet. Their environment influences.
You're sure about that? What about like lobsters?
I don't think anybody. I said person, right?
No, but like a person is not attracted. A person is not attracted to a lobster.
Some people might be, and I think the people that are lobsters, who fuck lobsters and octopuses and shit.
Okay, but you can't speak for everybody as though everyone is all anything.
Something they were exposed to, probably as children, made them put them on a path where they'd be interested in fucking.
Doobie, you've already you've already given the game. So then in that case,
no, wait, let me.
Just as likely, hold on. Doobie, then just as likely, then Doobie, you already get it. So in bestiality, right? We should be afraid of bestiality. So like when Professor Pisco teaches his kids that the cow goes moo, right? And the dog goes bark, right? He has acknowledged the fact that these animals exist, right? And it's okay for these animals to be there in your environment, right? Maybe they're going to want to fuck them, Doobie. So we need to design a bill.
That's your rationale, Doobie. That's your logic in a T.
Do you think that it'd be reasonable for us to make it to prohibit teachers from teaching to having lessons curriculum about fucking animals?
You're missing the point.
Some people in the world have an attraction to their dogs and fuck their dogs. Prime, do you think that'd be a reasonable thing to ask for?
You're missing the point, dude.
Wait, hold on. Can Prime answer this question? Prime, do you think it'd be unreasonable for a parent to say, "Hey, I don't want my child learning about fucking dogs"?
Right? Yes, there's no value in it.
Because I'm worried, because we have a dog at home, and I'm worried that my kid learning about how normal it is to fuck dogs might come home and try to fuck our dog. Prime, do you think that'd be a reasonable thing for a parent to do?
That's not the instruction that I'm talking about. I would think it would be. No, I'll answer your question. I think it's reasonable to say that to ban that, right? But the instructions that we've been talking about, right? Age appropriate, since we're not defining age appropriate, right? That's fine. But age appropriate instruction on being gay, I'll define it myself, right? It would be, hey, gay people exist. Hey, like sometimes boys kiss other boys, right? That or trans people exist, right? So let's pull gave you out for a second, that trans people even exist, right? If that's the instruction that trans people exist, this is a thing that people do, and it's okay, right? If that's the instruction, then the instruction about animals existing is on the same level.
Hey, trans people exist. Trans people are a thing. So what if the student says, "Hey, what's a trans person? What does that mean?" And then
Doobie is evading the point of your example.
I'm not evading it whatsoever. I'm not, because it's not address the point of it. It's not just they're going to say that trans people exist or that gay people exist.
It's so dumb. You missed the whole point of Prime's example
at all.
Yes,
right?
Did.
No, stop trying to decipher what I'm saying. Prime. So in this example you gave, right? It's not as simple as trans people exist. That's the end of the lesson. Right? It's going to be, what's a trans person, teacher? And the teacher's going to need to explain that. And then the children are going to have questions about that, right? What it means to be a boy born into a girl's body or a girl born into, they're going to go down this list of questions that the students are going to have about this very complex topic.
What are they going to say? Because apparently what the thing that they're going to say is going to have life-altering consequences. So tell me, what are they going to say to them, right? So, hey, what's a trans person, right? And they say that sometimes boys want to wear dresses, and that's okay, right? And then there's a second question, a follow-up, right? So what's the follow-up? And then what are they saying that's going to be life-altering? Please.
Okay, but it's not just that boys wear dresses. It's that boys are actually girls, right? So it's not. So some boys right now, some of you boys might be girls, and that's okay, right? And I think introducing that concept to a 5-year-old could be extremely confusing. Because it's not just, hey, sometimes boys wear dresses, right? Then you could point to someone wearing like a sari or whatever the fuck they're called, right? Or like a robe. Like, oh, hey, sometimes boys wear things that look like dresses. Like, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about, hey, this looks like a boy. It's actually something else.
I see what you're saying. Go ahead, Pisco.
Yeah, so Doobie totally failed to realize the purpose of Prime's example of bringing up the cows. So one thing, just to quick address, like, Doobie, would you want people to like say it's good to like screw dogs? Like, no. One is because that would be like a normative instruction that like it's okay to do this. And nowhere in Prime's example are you on all fours where he's saying it's good to do something with respect to trans people. He was just giving you a descriptive reality. So that's not a fair comparison. And what's more is it's not a good use of time, because there aren't a lot of you're not likely to run into situations in which bestiality manifests itself to the same degree that you would with respect to trans people. And so it would be a waste of time, as well as being a normative lesson, which is specifically not what Prime is doing and what he showed you. You also failed to grasp the purpose of him bringing that up was you can use your logic that kids are affected by stuff and they're affected by instruction to prove almost anything. Who's to say kids are affected by stuff, that showing them cows might not increase the rate of cow-related bestiality? Based on your logic, that's all it takes. You just need to show that kids are generally, their sexualities are determined at an early age and all that stuff. And therefore, the classroom instruction specifically, you don't have to do any more work on showing this specific link between that specific treatment and the result there. Of course, you need to do more work. Of course, you need to talk about what's actually said and where the information is coming from and the context in which it's presented. It's not enough just to say that there's a general tendency of kids to absorb things from their environment. You need to show the specific treatment. That was what Prime was trying to elucidate by bringing up the cow example, and you totally missed it. You have the same.
I didn't miss it at all.